Welcome to Game Fondue Reviews. In this video we're going to take a look at Jambo. Jambo is a two-player game in which players are competing merchants in Central Africa. Let's jump right in with the description of the rules, see a few example turns being played, then I'll be back for some closing remarks.
This is the setup for Jambo. Each player just picks a color and takes a large market stand in that color along with 20 gold. The 5 action round markers are put in the center and the rest of the gold and all the wares form a supply. The deck is shuffled and each player just gets a hand of 5 cards to form their starting hand. That's for their eyes only. During the game, players alternate turns composed of 2 phases, which are draw cards and play cards. Players can take up to 5 actions per turn, which are indicated by these action markers here. The game ends when a player finishes his or her turn with at least 60 gold, and at that point the other player takes one more turn, and then whoever has the most gold wins. So let's go through the game turn, starting with that drawing cards phase, because it always has to happen first, though it is totally optional, so a player can skip it and go right to the playing cards phase. But if a player chooses to draw, they pay 1 action token and draw 1 card from the deck. They look at it secretly, and they either add it to their hand or discard it. If they choose to discard it, they can keep doing this by paying 1 action, all the way through all 5 if they'd like to, but you can only keep 1 card per turn. So if you ever decide to keep the card you see, it immediately goes to the play cards phase. So in the playing cards phase, it generally costs 1 action to play a card from your hand unless the card indicates otherwise. But there's a few different types of cards you can play. The first is a small market stand, which is just like your big one that holds 6, but it only holds 3. The first player in the game to build one costs 6. Any further market stands bought only cost 3, and a player can have as many of them as they want. They just put them face up in front of them, gives them more space to hold wares. The next type of card is the ware card, and players can use the ware cards to either buy or sell. If you're buying, you take a look at this number here and you pay that amount of gold and you take the corresponding wares. There have to be enough wares of each type left in the supply because they're limited, otherwise you cannot use this card. Also, you have to have enough space to place them on your boards. You'll also note that if the 6th base of your large market is ever full, that will cost you 2 money immediately at any time during the game. But you just pay this money and you take these corresponding wares and put them on empty spaces of your stands. But you can also use ware cards to sell, and you do that by returning the indicated wares from your stands to the supply and then taking the larger amount of money in the corner. You can never do this partially, and you can only ever play a ware card if you can perform the full action, either buying or selling. The next type of card is a utility card, and like all other cards, they cost 1 action to actually play on the board. So it would cost 1 action to play it, and then the turn it's played or any other later turns, you can pay 1 action to use its ability. They all have abilities, but you are limited to 3 utility cards in front of you. So if you ever want to play a 4th, you have to discard one, but you could have used the ability of that one before you discarded it. Next are people, and you just play them for an action and you do what they say and they're discarded. Animals work exactly like people, except they usually have an effect that targets the other person, and the other person can immediately discard a guard card from their hand to negate the effect of the animal. However, the player with the guard has to decide immediately if he wants to use the guard. He has to do it before the animal player even decides what type of effect he's going to do if he has a few different choices. Playing a guard in defense does not count as an action for that player, but it still counts as an action for the player playing the animal. The only other thing to note is if a player finishes their turn with at least 2 unused actions, they get 1 gold from the bank. So players alternate turns like this, and the game ends when a player ends his turn with at least 60 gold. The opponent takes 1 final turn, and afterwards whoever has the most gold wins, but the tie favors the player who did not end the game. Let's get going with this example playthrough. In this example, the player's hands are kept face up just to make it easy, but during a game they would be for their eyes only. So this player is going to go first, and he decides he would like to draw, because remember, the drawing phase has to be first, but it is optional. So he takes a card and secretly looks at it, and he decides he's going to discard it, but that still costs an action. So now he can either move to the next phase or draw another card because he has not yet taken one. So he decides to draw another by paying 1 action, and he really does want that crocodile, so he's going to add it to his hand. So he has to immediately move on to the play cards phase. Even if he wanted to, he can't draw any more cards. So he decides he's going to play the Arabian Merchant, and that costs 1 action. And when you play the Arabian Merchant, you do what it says, which is draw 3 cards, and then this player is going to start by bidding on them for at least 1 gold. And the players are going to alternate, so he's going to start with 1, and they're going to alternate back and forth. Whoever bids the highest is going to get all 3 of those cards. So this guy decides to bid 2. Now it goes back to this guy, and he decides to move it up to 3, and this guy is done. That's too rich for him, so the highest bidder pays the money. This is discarded, and he gets these 3 cards to his hand. Now he still has 2 actions, so he can keep doing things, or if he stops with 2 actions left, he gets 1 money from the bank. He decides he would like to buy some wares though, so he's going to buy these, and that costs 4 money. He has enough space, so he can do this, so he pays the 4 money to the bank, and he gets 2 of these brown ones and 1 green one. So at this point, he has 1 action left. He decides he is going to stop though for the turn. So we put all these back, and now it's the other guy's turn, and it proceeds exactly the same way. We'll jump ahead a little bit in the game so you can see some different things happen. Welcome back. We've progressed a little bit in the game. It's now this player's turn, and he decides he does want to draw, so he looks at the top card secretly, and he says, you know what, he's going to add that to his hand. He's already built one, remember, that costed 6 because he was the first one to do it, but any further ones, even by him, only cost 3. So that was one action because he took a card. The next thing he's going to do is he's going to play a parrot to take one wear of his choice from his opponent, but his opponent's going to discard a guard card to negate that. So he's down to 3 actions. He decides he's going to use the throne. He just can only use it once per turn, so he has to indicate that in some way. Just by tapping it is an easy way. Take one wear of your choice from your opponent, and then give them one wear of your choice from yourself. So he's going to take this brown one here and provide this ring to him. And that was another action gone, and then he's going to use his drums to return one of his wares to the supply and draw one card from the deck, adding it to his hand. So he does that, and he gets another card in his hand. So that was his 4th action, so he has 1 left, and for his last action, he decides he's going to play this card, and he's going to spend 4 money. So he pays that 4 to the bank, gets 1 back, and he gets 2 of this type and 1 ring. So he's totally out of action, so now it's going to be the next guy's turn, and play continues like that. Remember, he could have used that wear card to sell, but he didn't have the necessary ones to sell. But he did have enough space to buy them, so that's what he did. We'll jump ahead near the end of the game so you can see what that looks like. Welcome back. It's near the end of the game because this player has 58 money. So first he's going to draw by paying an action. He decides to keep the card. And then during his turn, he's going to use the ability of this to discard a card from his hand to get 2 money. So he discards that, and he takes 2 money. He is now at 60 money, so unless something happens, the game is going to end after the next player's turn. He also decides to stop his turn when he has more than 2 actions left, so he gets 1 more money. So this player has to get to at least 61 money or the game is over. So he takes his turn. He decides to skip the draw phase, so he goes right on to this phase. He plays a dancer that allows him to use a wear card like it has any numbers on it. So he's going to sell 3 of any resource for 11 money as 1 action. So he just decides to sell this, and this one here. So that's 11 money for him, and then those 2 cards are gone, but that only cost 1 action, and he still has a long way to go to get up to 61. So for his next action, he's going to discard this card here and play another utility card. So that's 2 actions. He's going to use this utility card. He draws until he finds a wear card and discards the rest. So that was his 3rd action, by the way. So we'll see what he gets. And there's a wear one there, and wow, what a coincidence, that's exactly what he has. So he's going to use that to sell these for 12 money. With his last action, he knows he can't get up to 61, so he's just going to use this to pay 1 gold to draw 1 more card. So that was all 5 actions. The game is over, and because this guy did not catch up, although he did have a very good turn, this guy is the winner.
Jambo is a really interesting 2-player game. There's a lot of different card effects in the deck that make the game fun and replayable. Because a big strategic portion of the game is deciding how many actions to allot to drawing, it really does make a difference to know the cards in the deck. So the first couple plays, you might just want to familiarize yourself with those cards, or just look at them ahead of time, because it really makes a big difference strategically and enjoyment-wise in this game, understanding what cards are in there and what could come out, as opposed to just kind of playing the cards. But in all cases, the actions are very easy to understand, and it goes back and forth really fast, so both players are engaged. Also, there's in tight games, there's a really neat element at the end of the game where you may not want to end the game, because if the other person is able to tie you, they're going to win. So you have to make sure you win by at least 1 more than the other person is able to get to. So that always keeps you on guard. So if it looks fun to you, check it out. That's Jambo.